done this in a very long time, so I'm a little bit anxious that the technology is going to work. So bear with me on this. We're going to get started. You're going to be with me for around about 10 minutes to start off. My name's Emmett Blacken, and I am currently working at Safford Community School. I know that I've got a couple of colleagues that are online as well. We've also got Tanya. I'm going to just spin it around to her, who works for Infinite and leads on the NPQs. For Tanya, will take you for around about 30 to 35 minutes following my very brief introduction. And then you'll be back to my beautiful voice after that. Hoping I'm going to get us somebody there. The dad jokes will continue for the rest of the morning. So, to get us kicked off, one of the things that I would like you to do is if you could just go into the chat function, please. If you could put your name, your designation, and where you are, that'll just give us a very, very brief introduction. So, I'll just give you a minute to do that, please.
To access the chat function at the moment. I'll keep trying.
Same for me as well. Can't access the chat function. Same. Yeah.
Okay. We'll spin off into a different tangent then, and we'll leave that, and we'll come back a little bit later. One of the things that we're going to be doing today is we're going to be focusing predominantly on your implementation, what the obstacles are, actually getting on with your implementation project as well, and then that opportunity to identify any key takeaways so that we can move forward, and you move forward really confidently and comfortably with the course. Obviously, we're delighted to have you on board. Having been involved with Infinite for a little bit of time now, one of the things that I've reflected on over the last 5 or 6 years is that I've always found it as a really great opportunity to network with like-minded colleagues. There's lots of things that, even if it isn't directly related to your implementation project or directly related to the course, there's things that you can take away with you and take back to your own schools. And I hope that you get loads out of this with your engagement in those conversations. Whilst I would love to have more face-to-face meetings, I suppose coming up to the winter break in the way that schools are at the minute, I'm sure that you guys are incredibly busy, and hopefully you're not crawling to the end next week, and everybody's well and looking after themselves. Okay, something to reflect on, and just to give you a bit of a heads up, what I might do is I see some familiar faces there, so I can see Scott, and I can also see Will. So what I'll do is I'm going to pick on you first, and I'll get some feedback from you. So I will ask you to unmute your mic at some point and give us a little bit of feedback. So just looking at the quote that's in front of you at the minute, did you just pause briefly? And I wanted you to think about, what does teacher leadership mean to you in relation to that quote? If I could just give you 1 minute or 2 minutes, then we'll start off with Scott. He's going to give us a bit of an insight into where his headspace is, and then we'll follow up with Will after that. Scott, are you up for giving us a little bit of an insight?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sending me up first, Emmett. So I think when we're talking about leadership and a strong climate, I think when we talk about leadership and implementation, if you don't have the right relationship and the right climate with your team, then you can have the best project in the world. But if your middle leaders and then the staff body via them don't trust you and you don't have that relationship with them, then you're not going to be able to implement those projects. So it's having that relationship, that trust, that community where they will go with you on your implementations and support you on those ideas. I think that's really, really important, and finding ways to get people to work collaboratively with you on projects.
Perfect. Can we go on to Will next?
Yeah, hi. I suppose the only thing I was going to add to that was, you need to have a supportive environment. You need people to be on board with you to be able to implement something long-term successfully.
And do we have anybody who would like to put their hand up and add something to that?
Yeah, I think. Can you hear me?
Okay, Jack.
Yeah. I think just adding to what both of them just said in just regards to you wouldn't do anything that the team don't think that you'd be able to do yourself. So I think it goes back to that kind of that trust and in the team having you in terms of if you're asking them to do something, there's got to be a good rationale behind it. So you might have done research, you might have trialed something else, and then you'll kind of explain, this is why I want to implement this, this is the impact it's going to have, this has been proven here. And sometimes, them knowing that you would be able to implement that yourself in the classroom, kind of having that trust from the team around you can go a long way. So it all comes back down to that trust of the team having you and making sure that any implementation that you have is successful.
I've got a couple of hands there, so I feel like I can't leave you out. So if I go to Lucy and then to, I think, Bryce after that.
Hi everyone. I'm just going to add in a very small bit. It's all about bringing it back to the children. So we're saying about relationships and how crucial and important they are to building that climate and making change, and having any change that you're doing being evidence-based, but that evidence always needs to come back to what's the impact going to be on the children. That's always going to be the rationale behind anything that you're kind of doing in school to make change and implement change.
Thank you. And Bryce?
I was going to kind of say the same point Lucy made. I think it all comes back to the why. I think we've all been in schools where these initiatives come one after the other, and it's the lasting. But I think you get the buy-in when you explain to the staff the why we're doing it and the impact it's going to have.
Brilliant, thank you. And now, just before I pass over to Tanya, in terms of how we approach this, we like to see this group as a very kind of close-knit, confidential group where we can share things and we don't take that outside of the group as well. So just to kind of set that as a condition moving forward, that you should feel safe to be able to bring things to the table. Maybe not necessarily today, but it might be in your further face-to-face sessions as well. So do feel that you have that confidentiality moving forward as well. On that note, I'm going to pass to Tanya. She'll take us through for the next 30 minutes, and then you'll be back with me.
Seamlessly transitioning across there on my wheelie chair. Good morning, everybody. It's so lovely to be able to be working with Emmett and yourselves. Very excited to start with the new NPQH group this morning. And I hope that the communication and liaison and so on so far has been effective. Obviously, if ever you have any questions or queries, I am here as your facilitator today, but obviously I am part of Infinite Learning. So please do let us know if you have any glitches or any issues. You know that we are ably supported by the lovely Sabrina back at our offices there in Studio City. So always ask if ever you are in doubt about anything. So moving on, Emmett has already mentioned about, if you like, the protocols for our sessions. And I know we're online today, but the plan is definitely to have all of our face-to-face sessions in person. And when we meet for our first face-to-face, we will have a bit of a vote as to how we want to move forward with our PLGs. So when we meet for our first face-to-face after the winter break, we can then unpick the protocols a little bit further. But just to echo as Emmett has said, it's very much trying to create that safe space, that space for collaboration in a professional manner, and particularly mentioning the sort of confidentiality piece. So just wanted to re-mention that. So you've heard a little food for thought message there from Western, Hindley and Cunningham. I am going to talk a little bit, first of all, just about the structure of the course. I know you've had your induction from UCL. Just trying to explain how the PLGs and the work that you do in preparation for your sessions fits into the programme. So every time we have a meeting, whether it's a PLG or a face-to-face session, you will have materials to prepare beforehand. And hopefully you will all have had a chance to have looked at the materials that were sent out. They will always be on your UCL Extend, okay? That is your self-directed study, as it's called. So in terms of preparing for today, there were a number of tasks. What I don't want you to ever do is reach a point where you think I can't attend the session because I haven't done my homework. Okay, I'd rather you turn up and say, do you know what, something really big cropped up and I'm really sorry I haven't been able to do this. Okay, please don't miss a session just because. However, having said that, please, where possible, try to do the preparatory work, because it's very frustrating when you're then not getting paid to work with someone or triad, however we're working, and you work with someone that hasn't got a lot to contribute on that occasion because they haven't done the pre-reading. I sometimes do get feedback that people feel that level of frustration. I'm sure that won't be the case, and you're all prepped and ready to go this morning. So often we get, as you will see here, watching videos, but the key I just wanted to mention, because sometimes people don't actually clock what this is about. So one of the things we wanted you to do for today was to complete your module 1 learning audits. And the reason why you do learning audits is to enable you to personalize your own leadership learning, if that makes sense. So when you complete your learning audits, you will be identifying whether you are emerging or whether you feel you are developed in an area, for instance. And any area that you identify as perhaps an area that you want to improve upon, that's where you can then tailor your own readings within the UCL Extend. So you don't have to read everything. You don't, of course you can, you are more than welcome to do that. But it is one of the ways in which the programme is the personalisation of your own leadership learning journey, if that makes sense. So I hope that's clear. You will always be given, number 5 there, you will always be given domain digests to read. Okay, that is sort of your theoretical understanding, if you like, in the background there. This time it was on implementation. Sometimes it's supplemented with a video. This time we had Jonathan Sharples just with a short clip there, just explaining and exploring what implementation meant to him. Okay, so that's where it comes from. Now, the next part is when you take the learning audits, module 1, your whole programme, the NPQH, is underpinned by the NPQH framework, which is obviously written by the DFE. And the NPQH framework is like your curriculum, if you like, or your syllabus for your course. And in the framework, hopefully you've had a chance to look at it, there are 10 different domains. And each module, so we're doing module 1 now, you will cover 3 domains in module 1, the first of which we are starting today, which is implementation. So let's move on and have a look at what that looks like. Every time you look at a new domain, part of the NPQH framework, the domain is broken down, when you look at the DFE framework, into 2 halves. Learn that statements, abbreviated LT statements, and learn how to statements, LHT statements, learn how to. So the learn that aspect is very much the theoretical journey that you are on. The domain digests, sometimes the case study, exemplification materials that you choose to read to grow yourself further. So that's the sort of theoretical reading and the prior preparation. With regards to the learning how to, that's then the best bit when we come together to do the networking that Emmett mentioned, and we start to talk about how we might put these things into practice, or we reflect on what we did last time, what perhaps went well, what didn't go so well. So that's the application, if you like, learn how to put that into practice. And my reason for mentioning this is because the learn that LT statements and LHT statements are actually all of the statements in the learning audits. Okay, so that's how it joins up nicely. So when you complete a learning audit, your self-assessment of you, that is designed specifically from the framework and the learn that and learn how statements. That's hopefully how it all connects. So as you can see today, we are going to be learning about or learn that. Implementation is an ongoing process. It's over a period of time. It's not a one-hit wonder. Effective implementation requires, I think Lucy mentioned this a little bit, very much about accurately diagnosing, making evidence-informed decisions. Maybe it was Bryce that put that in there at the end, with the children being the ultimate goal in whatever we look to implement. And lastly, then about thorough preparation, and that's what we're going to be exploring today. Obviously, by the end of the session, you're going to have started thinking about the learn how to, then making the right choices. How are you going to make sure that what you decide to do back in your school is going to have, to use Lucy's word there, the impact that you want it to have? Because if it's not going to have an impact, also we can all sort of project that fails, there's no preempting that, but we can do our best to try to avoid that. So that's the learning journey we're going to go on this morning, so I hope that helps. The last slide, before I get us thinking again, take us on to this. It's very much how the model of the NPQs runs. So we will always start. It's sort of like a spiral curriculum, if you like. We will always start with a check-in on your prior learning, your pre-reading, and so on. Then, as you also know, the face-to-face events are often called knowledge exchange. We're looking at how we apply that knowledge, how we can engage with the materials, and ultimately how we can take that back into us. So, before we move on, I did want to ask, and I was going to ask people to do this in a breakout room. So let's just see if we can do this. In here, I'm going to ask you, thinking back to, let's go back to this slide. Hopefully you have had chance to complete your learning audit. So I'm going to ask you to go into a breakout room and just maybe take 2 minutes each just to say introduce yourselves, obviously, because we weren't able to do that, and just what it is about from your learning audit that you were starting to think that you might need to focus on. That's about you and your personal journey. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Let's hope. Okay, I think just. Okay, let's try this. Okay, actually, I'm just admitting one more person. Sorry, somebody's just joining, so I need to just change the rooms. Okay, hopefully that should be good. So hopefully we'll send you off. So just to be clear, thinking about your learning audits in a pair, just have a chat about, obviously it's module 1, so there's lots of topics there, not just implementation, but what it is you've identified so far that you want to work on. If you haven't had chance to do your learning audit, maybe what it is you're hoping to get out of the programme. Okay, 5 minutes, then give you off back at 9:27. Thank you.
قلت له على فكره اي حد بيطلب مني حاجه مناسبه ببعتها له حتى لو ما
We
اعرفوش.
will go off shortly, as
ايه
you know,
ده؟
it does
اساليه
take
ان
a
انت
minute just to go through,
هتسافر.
and we all smile looking at each
قلت
other
له
on
بيجي وقتها
screen.
بس ايه ده قريب عبد الكريم على طول جاله الايميل الناس دي تبعك ورد كتب عليا خلاص. ده قعد يتعبني.
كان عبد الكريم هنا ولا
عبد الكريم لا عبد الكريم هنا
يعني
السنه اللي فاتت
مش السنة اللي
Off you
فاتت.
go.
قبليها.
يعني ما جالش السنة اللي
ايوه
فاتت؟
ايوه بس بادئ من شهرين.
ما ردوش بس
ما هو مش اي حد يقبلوه. الكلام لازم يكتبوا عنك ان انت تنفع فعلا.
هو عبارة عن ايه بقى؟ معهد ولا دبلومة ولا
شهاده بتاعت الحكومه. الحكومه تديك الشهاده.
شهادة ايه يعني؟
اداره المدارس
ايه؟
شهاده وطنيه. عشان كان المدرس يجي يدرس هناك بياخد رخصه.
مم.
مدير المدرسه يجي يدير المدرسه بياخد رخصه.
دي رخصة مهنية هناك.
اه الحكومه بتديها لك بس الجامعه بتساعدك تدرسك. بس الحكومه هي اللي تمنحك الشهاده مش الجامعه.
يعني ممكن تخش بيها بطانية تشتغل بيها بطانية؟
ايه بس مش عشان بريطانيا عشان الخليج. بريطانيا ايه اللي اشتغل؟ ايه اللي يوديني بريطانيا؟ فلوس هنا يا باشا. مش هناك مش هاخد فلوس.
مش انا بابا ما بتواصلش معاه.
مش هم ايه.
بس بص.
اه لا اخر مره كان من شهر تقريبا. لا عشان مثلا ما ينفعش امسك مدير مدرسه مهما عمل لما ياخد رخصه مدير مدرسه. وما ينفعش اشتغل مدرس لما ياخد رخصه مدرس. هو هناك مش واخد رخصه مدرس حتى. مراته لما نزلت خدتها. تبقى سنه وتروح مدرسه تربيه عملي ومش عارف ايه يبقى يديك رخصه مدرس. هاي جود مورنينج.
think we're done.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, welcome back. First of all, apologies, Jamie. Jamie in Saudi. I believe you got left in a room on your own. I don't know whether somebody perhaps dropped out because I can see that Aaron hadn't been assigned. So I don't quite know what happened there. So apologies. I hope you were the only two that were affected. And it was interesting because I ended up in a room with Will and Kurat. So I did manage the times around their dialogue. So I hope that was useful. I know not everybody probably managed to talk specifically about their learning audits, but I just wanted to really say that often we go into breakout rooms like this, you will have read the work as part of your preparation for your induction by Professor Louise Stoll. And I really want you to remember this piece because it's not just about professional dialogue. We band around this time professional dialogue in the staff room or staff meetings, but one of the really great things that we start to build on an NPQ program is what Professor Stoll talks about as professional learning conversations. And for me, there's a slight nuanced difference, and it's about that ability to challenge. So obviously that wasn't a dialogue necessitating the need for challenge, but as we move forward throughout the program, particularly with your implementation projects, when you meet and you start to reflect and you share with people an update on your progress with your project, it would be really helpful if your colleagues, each other as professionals, you are engaging in that professional challenge or professional learning conversation with your peers. So I hope that was just couple of minutes there to be able to introduce yourself to somebody and start to get a flavour of the types of conversations that you might have along the way. So just a quick little activity now then for you, something to think about. I'm going to pick up on something that Bryce mentioned right at the start. He said, yeah, sometimes the problem in schools is we have basically, in summary, innovation overload. Okay, we've all been there, innovation overload. And one of the key things that we're going to explore today is what are the obstacles to implementation, so the pitfalls, and how we can think and plan to avoid those. Okay, so right at the planning stage, right where you are now, because you might not have any idea at all as to what your project title is yet. Let's just have a little explore of that. So thinking back over your career, and I was going to ask you to put this in the chat, but we can't, so I will be looking for hands up volunteers unless I'll be selecting people off my list. Thinking back over your career, what percentage of school improvement initiatives would you say actually led to demonstrable sustained improvements in pupil outcomes? So just have a little think about that. Maybe jot down on your notepad what percentage actually, if you like, are successful. And then I'll take any hands up who's brave enough to give me a shot at the bow. So Sarah, go for it.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Personally, I think that the key word there is sustained. I think that there are lots of implementation projects that go with 100% effort and they become successful, but only in the short term. And then you reflect back over it and you think, well, actually, because we haven't sustained it, we're right back to square one. So overall, for me, it would be around 30% of projects that we actually see a long-term benefit that can be built on year.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to leave that there. I'm not going to make any comments. I've got a couple of other hands up. It's really interesting. Who else have I got? Jamie, seeing as I neglected you for the last session, come in there and see what your odds are against the 30% mark from Sarah.
It's nice to return from solitary confinement. I think that I'm going to go to sort of less than 20%. And again, following on from what the previous lady said, I think it's sustained. So there's often a feeling that you implement something and then at the end of the year that's been successful or it hasn't been, so let's move on to the next focus. And actually sustaining something over the longer term is something that hasn't often happened in my experience. And that can be because something's been successful and so you can move on to the next area, or it could be because the leadership focus has changed and so you move on to something new. So sustaining something over the long term and getting really something embedded in the long term is something that I haven't seen very much at all.
That's great, thank you. I'm not going to comment on your figure because we'll have a few more edging our bets. So we've got a 20% from Jamie and a Sarah with a 30%. I'm just picking up one thing there before I take some other hands up. You mentioned sometimes things just stop at the end of the year. I think working in Dubai, I don't think I even introduced myself at the start. Sorry, I have been a head of secondary in Dubai, two schools in Dubai, Dubai British School and Dubai British School, Jumeirah Park, for sort of 14 years between the two. I think one of the big challenges we face, we all know, is the annual inspection cycle. And therefore, you know, and then different initiatives are brought in from external, as we know. So we all then have to run with these new projects. But we'll come back to that because we're not analysing it at the minute. So, Laurie Joyner, you've got your hand up. What have you got to tell us? What percentage are you going for, Laurie?
I wasn't going to actually mention a percentage. It was just following up on what Jamie said and very linked to what you were saying about just the way that things change. So there's initiatives that come in from the government that we're supposed to implement, and that can take focus away from other things. Or you're responding to that inspection cycle and you know your KHDA report, so you have to take it in that direction. But also how transient it is with staff coming in and out in any international community. You know, you think as a school that you've got something really well embedded, and then you discover 3 years down the line that that's actually slipped a bit because maybe we've not put the training into this new cohort of staff that came in this year. So I'm thinking about, like, in our school, it's the behaviour, the positive behaviour that we've been working on for a couple of years, and we saw this year that had started to slip, and it is just because you're getting new staff in constantly every year.
Yeah, thank you. But you're not going to put a number on that? Be bold.
I'll go in the middle, 25.
I like it when it's sitting in the middle. Okay. I'll take a last response. Thank you. There are two. I can see Jamil, and then I'll go to Will lastly. So Jamil.
Hi, Tanya. I was going to say somewhere in the region of 10 to 20%. I was thinking more around the 10% mark. In terms of actually having a successful impact over a period of time. And I think actually everyone's touched on some of the things that I was thinking. Staff turnover is a big one. We do things that I've implemented over the last few years, and you assume that everyone's doing it, but then you realise actually with a 10-20% turnover of staff every year, after you don't even know the initiative that you're trying to run. I think there is pressure from above. I think particularly with Dubai and the private schools that we are running here. I think there is that pressure to try something new for the sake of something new, to be a little bit different and innovative. I think it means that we are trying lots of different things all of the time, rather than really trying to spend maybe 2 or 3 years really trying to embed something and have a significant impact.
Thank you. Yeah, lots of big words coming through: sustainability, embedding, and so on. Lots of things that we will loop back around to. So thank you for sharing. Initiative-itis, I think, or innovative-itis, I don't know, the overload. Last one person coming in there then. Will, please.
Laurie and Jamil actually touched on it. I'm just going to say the transient nature of Dubai. You know, you get a leader that implements a project, they then move on. There's no one to drive it at the end of the project. So yeah, the sort of that transient nature of where we are.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just hopefully you can remember some of these thoughts and comments that people are sharing, and even your own reflections. It's going to be really important that you hang on to these things, because this will be key to you when you start to think about your project and your preparation, because ultimately you'll work through this with Emmett in about 5 minutes when I hand over, but you will be needed to think about, okay, I've got the challenge of knowing what I want to do this year and now, the ideas generation, but ultimately I also need to be thinking about the sustainability. Already at this planning stage, you actually need to be thinking about how can I sustain the project. So in terms of numbers, let's see who came the closest. There is no hard and fast statistic on this. Sorry to disappoint the mathematicians amongst you. But we do know, and I am a business and economics teacher by trade, that in the business world, we're often given a figure that before ideas even leave the boardroom, about 70% of business ideas fail before they even get off the table. If you think about the business world compared to schools, there is no doubt that the educational world is far more complex than running a business. You've only got to try to think how difficult it is to do an organisation chart for a school. I mean, that's almost impossible in its own right. So if schools are far more complex than businesses, and businesses only manage to get 30% of new initiatives off the ground, then Sarah, you were being very optimistic at 30%, and we were probably coming in more to the, I don't know, less than 30%, shall we say. So therefore everybody was right. Don't we like that, when everybody was right in the room? Okay. So thank you for engaging in that. Just to take it a little bit further before we have a 5-minute comfort break, just push you a little bit more to the second part of this question, which is, you've started to touch on it actually. You've talked about innovation overload, you've talked about staff turnover, we've talked about the pressures externally of inspections, but just taking that question in its own right here, does anybody different want to come in with, in your experience, what are the major obstacles to effective implementation of whole school change? Any other obstacles, just to help us be mindful today when we're thinking about our own projects? Anybody else like to come in? Okay. A few people starting to put their hand up. Let's go, Rob, please. Hi, Rob.
Hi. Yeah, I think it goes back a little bit to the quote that Emmett shared at the beginning, and about, I think sometimes we sit down as leaders and we discuss about our school improvement direction, but often it's the middle leaders who are going to be the drivers for that, and it's building that culture, because you can have the vision, but if they don't share in that vision, they're probably the ones closest to the teachers who are going to push it through in their teams, and you need to have them on board, and it's sort of building in those checkpoints and pathways for how you can measure the sustainability of the project. And I think it's building the culture in the school, particularly to those middle leaders as sort of the interim point between the leadership team and the teachers that are going to push that through.
Brilliant, thank you. I love that. I've actually got a slide to summarise all of this, and that's the first bullet point on my slide. We call it black box leadership, when your leadership team just goes in a room and shuts the door, makes a decision, and and then the people who actually have to implement it are not really part of it. And particularly, as you say, middle leaders being the agents of change, the drivers, and all the rest of it. Thank you. I'm going to keep going. I'll just pick a few people. I won't be able to take everyone. I'm going to go to somebody different. Saliha.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we are facing resistance to change. Teachers, students, and staff may resist new processes or reforms due to comfort with existing practices, lack of motivation, or fear of additional workload. So there is a resistance of the staff, inadequate training or resources, limited access to the training programs for teacher and staff, insufficient funds or infrastructure to implement proposed changes, poor stakeholder engagements, lack of involvement and cooperation from key stakeholders, such as parents, teachers, and administrative staff, time constraints, challenges in allocating time for trainings, meetings, or implementation, data and diagnostic limitations, inaccurate or insufficient data collections, cultural and behavior barriers, deeply ingrained behaviors or attitudes among students and staff that are hard to change, monitoring and sustainability issues, difficulty in consistently monitoring progress and making adjustment, unforeseen challenges, external factors such as policies, emergencies, or shifts in leaderships. Thank you, ma'am.
Wow, I think that deserves a round of applause, Saliha. I don't know how you actually managed to do that in the short space of time that we had. A ginormous list. Hopefully don't let that put you off, everybody, just because these are all the barriers to implementation. But in all genuine seriousness, thank you for bringing those to our attention. There were many. Thank you very much. I'm going to take just two more people. So I'm going to take Amir. Thank you.
She mentioned every single thing that we would have on our lists, but I would start by saying the lack of communication, like the rationale or the why people are doing this thing, can be one major obstacle and can kill the project before it even starts. Another one will be the lack of engagement, lack of involvement by staff, lack of motivation, lack of expertise in the skills. The staff do not have the skills required to implement the project, and maybe also lack of follow-up and monitoring of how the process goes.
Thank you. Lots of key points raised there, particularly they concluding with the lack of monitoring. Someone mentioned the word earlier about you assume that these things are happening. We can never assume we know the importance, even if it's just light touch monitoring, to know that the implementation is taking place. Last point I'll take then, please, from Salma.
Everyone, yeah, sorry, I was just gonna same thing as what the person before me just said was about communication. In my experience, I felt like a lot of leaders lack, it makes sense in their head, and to get that communicated correctly to all the different stakeholders that you have to work with in order to enforce or implement a change that's going to affect everyone within the school, whether it's staff, parents, the leaders, middle leaders. It takes a lot of clear communication, and you really need to understand your staff, and you need to understand the body of the people that you're working with. And I think that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to be able to get to the stage where you can confidently say, this is what my parent cohort are going to be like, and to understand how they're going to react so that you can plan for that effectively. And I think a lot of leaders don't give themselves the chance and the time. And I understand it's hard. I know it's really hard, but I do think it's really important that you need to understand who you're working with and the cohort of people that you're working with. They're how are they like emotionally, reactively, to then understand how you're going to plan and implement an initiative. So for me, that's just one of the big things.
Wow, thank you. That's encapsulated so much about communication, the clarity around that, taking the stakeholders with you, building that trust and that rapport, the working relationships piece you've touched on there. So much information in there. Thank you so much for your rich answers. They were amazing. Oh my goodness. My next slide is practically defunct, so I'll go to it very quickly. Fine. Perfect. I think there we go. So just to summarise then, just before we have 5-minute comfort break, so you can just stretch your legs. So lots of things that you've mentioned there, I'll just run through them. So black box leadership, as it's called, people making decisions in offices, all nicely, great, that's wow, but nobody really knows the people who are on the ground who actually need to do the work. Top-down implementation, similar. It can require coercive methods, therefore not very popular. Some people just nod along, yeah, we'll do this, that's fine, we're all very compliant about it, but there's no real buy-in. Consultation, yes, let's have consultation and discuss what we should implement, but it's not really meaningful, the decision's already been made. This is very Dubai thing, isn't it? The shiny new thing syndrome. Oh, everybody's doing it, so we need to be doing this as well. Maybe it's not fit for your school. Maybe it's not fit for your school at that point in time. The one-year NPQ project, so you'll need to be aware of this. You know, people think, oh, here we go again. Here's one of those projects coming in, everybody. This is a really key word, fidelity. Okay, this is a word you will see in the literature and the theory, making sure that you are doing the right amount. Are you being true to what you really need to do in the best interests of the school and the children? Time, resources, communication, and data has already been mentioned. So lots of information there to be mindful of. Just before we head off, because when we come back in 5 minutes, Emmett will take over. I just wanted to remind everybody while you're on your break, when you do decide upon your implementation project title, in terms of work-life balance and well-being, UCL are very specific and say, please take on a project that you are already responsible for. Don't go making up some new fandangled idea just to tick the box, oh, I've got to bring in some sort of new initiative. Don't fall foul of that. You are busy people, busy educators, busy leaders who will have many, many different projects that you will need to be doing within your schools. So use this as the vehicle to be working on that. So just before we go for break, any last questions? Just before I say 5-minute break. Okay, thank you. Being respectful of time, I'm going to turn my camera off and we will see you again at 9:55. Okay, thank you. 9:55.
Back off again, that'll give me an idea that everybody's listening. We're ready to go. So I'll just give that a minute. Thank you.
يعني طبعا انا ماليش دعوه بس يعني انا لو مثلا الموضوع اللي في سنه هقول لها
Brilliant. So we're going to dig a little deeper now into the implementation process, drawing on the guidance from the Education Foundation, yeah. And that'll have been sent through to you as part of your pre-reading as well. It's worth noting that it was updated in April 24. So there is an updated version of the model on the right-hand side. So the idea that there is that exploration stage, the assessment of it. We then got our preparation, so the plan, the design, and then that moves on to the delivery, the support, encouragement, monitoring, and then maintaining that effort. It was interesting that Saliha had talked about change, and I think a lot of conversations over the last, I suppose, 30 to 40 minutes were about change and barriers to change, and we can draw on Cotter's 8-step model that feeds in really well to this implementation process as well. Moving on to the next slide. It talks about our process. Okay. I will put you into breakout rooms on the next slide. I put you into 4 or 5 people in each room, and that'll start that discussion about what implementation means to you. But the idea there will be that you'll draw on your domain digest reading as well from Sharples to support that as well. It would be worth on the next slide after this to take a photograph. I see that the chat rooms aren't working. Normally I would send a screen grab or send a link to something. A few of you have sent a message that said you're not able to access that. But focusing on this slide in terms of the process and decision or plan to effect. I know that Tanya talked about impact, and that's something that you're going to focus on in terms of what we do next. But if we think about our NPQs in general, we do start with culture. And implementation helps leaders to engage their colleagues in this and unite people and engage them with their project. I I know that Tanya just spoke very briefly about this idea that in every school, you'll have that one person, that one leader that's doing something for, it could be a master's that they're doing, it could be a postgrad, or it could be one of the NPQs. And it's about creating that sustainable change and making sure that you have people with you. I think that in terms of my own context in our school, for us, culture is really important so that people buy into that. And these are some of the key terms that I've heard, again, over the last 30 to 40 minutes, in terms of what people are thinking about in relation to the implementation project. How do we get buy-in? How do we make sure that people are united together? And then if we reflect on Cotter's change model, about having those quick wins, but also being able to increase the momentum and increase the pace and keep that going as well. So again, that it's sustainable. I want you to just reflect on Sharple's short clip. You would have watched this already. I think it was only about 3 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, 24 seconds. If you can remember these 3 questions for the breakout rooms. So what does implementation mean to you? What kind of questions do you have? And what do you think your focus might be for your project? And I know that we've had some conversation already regarding that. I'll put you in for 10 minutes to the breakout room. One thing that I would ask is that you appoint someone who'll be able to put their hand up, just someone within about 30 seconds, the conversations that you were having. That would be great. I'm just going to open up these rooms now, and hopefully it works.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Jay.
Hi.
Hi. Nice picture behind you.
Yeah, student work.
Oh, it's lovely.
Impressive.
Sorry, I'm confused
How
about the project. Should we submit something during the course related to the project, or only in the end of the course?
No, I don't think we have to submit anything in terms of the project. We do the summative assessment at the end. The project, I think you just do like reflections on throughout.
So nothing to be submitted.
Rob's nodding.
Yeah, yeah, that's how it's worked for us in my school anyway. I've done it. It's like it's just a school project that you do your reflections on with your mentor, but then at the end, the actual sort of your past task is just. And you get a document linked to the school, and you've got to create your answers against that. So your project, it'll get you your percentage marks that you'll tick off as you go when you have your conversations with your mentor, but you won't actually submit the project. Or that's how it seems to have worked for others in my school.
Yeah. Okay. Did anyone else take a screenshot of the questions?
So only reflection will be for me only. I will keep the reflection for me, not to be submitted to anyone.
You have the meetings with you have the meetings with your mentor in school, so you'll have a school-based mentor, and you'll do those reflection meetings with them. So you'll share your reflections with your in-school mentor. Yeah, I didn't get a picture of the 3 questions. If anyone else did.
I don't know.
I did. I'm
share it.
Just a second. I'll see if I can.
I think it was like, what does implementation mean to you? The first one.
Yeah. So the first one was.
I think I've just sent. Does it come up in our chat? I've just sent it through. So it says,
Yeah,
what does it
mean? What question?
What does it mean to you? Sorry, Sarah.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What does implementation mean to you? What questions do you have? What might be your focus for your project? Yeah. Anyone want to shout out what implementation means?
I can go. So implementation to me, I think means there's a little bit of change management that you are also incorporating there. because you need to bring in, maybe move out some systems or practices that may not be optimum for the school and the culture of the school. So there's a requirement to bring in a change there. So I think implementation is comes with a space of how can you incorporate that change with the least amount of pushback. At the same time, you're able to keep in mind that this is the requirement and the context of the school. So will you be able to do full justice to it? So there is a requirement to know the temperature of the people in the building, what are the needs of the students, what are the needs of the organization, the institution as a whole, does it align with the mission and the vision? So I think implementation, of course, starts with an individual's desire to do something more productive and creative and good for the organization.
Yeah.
But the big picture is that it is a change for everyone else, and you need to be able to see that picture too when you're planning for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like two words you just said there were really nice, creative and productive. It kind of hits the nail on the head, really, doesn't it? But obviously, it's all about, the key words, sort of the buzzwords have come up this morning already. Like, it's sustained improvement. There has to be evidence based behind it. It has to come back to the children. I've always said to staff, if we're not doing it for the children, who are we doing it for? Like, what's the point? And yeah, I think therefore sort of implementation is all about like the evidence-based research that you've done in whatever capacity that is in your school, or whether it's an Ofsted or a KHDA inspection, whether it's from your monitoring cycle, whether it's feedback from a student survey or a parent survey. You've got that evidence-based, and then it's about planning like what you need to do. And I think in this is it Jonathan Sharples and the digest reading, the Domain Digest, it's all about explore and then plan and then sustain and then kind of reflect upon what you're doing. And I think I think sustained improvement can be hard. It's hard to come back to things. So many people have said it this morning about change of staff, and especially in Dubai, it's it can be such a high turnover, and that can be a really difficult thing. Yeah, I guess that would be my thought.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's that sustained part. Somebody mentioned at the beginning about you have something that is really embedded into the school and it's a big part of the school culture. For example, in our school, feedback down approach. Feedback, and that's been such a strong part of the school culture. And then in our most recent review, actually gone on a tangent. Sort of picking it up, something that you thought has been so embedded. And so it's different, so one misinterpretation, it's in a slightly different direction, the consistency and
You got my charger, right?
the fact that it's a parachute and danger. You can't assume that it is being monitored, sort of executed how you think it is, and you have to keep checking once it is embedded. You have to keep sustaining it.
And we're busy people, like everyone's busy, but when you're in leadership, there's so many things to be doing all of the time and so many things to remember that actually you do make assumptions, and that's really hard.
Priority list, doesn't it? And then it's like your next thing comes to you, I've got to do this.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know why Sarah's just gone. She's all there. The other question was, what questions do you have? I also can't remember how long we're supposed to be in here.
I think it's been 10 minutes. So
did they?
I'm sure I can hear time for 2 minutes.
It's well done. You've passed the course. You found the diamond. Are there any questions? I guess that we have.
Linked to our own implementation project.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that or is that? I don't know if it's like what questions do you have about what you've read?
Possibly, yeah. Actually, overall, I really like the model. I think it's just I need to pin on my own. The main fact for me, so that when I've got these projects, it's almost like that's where this one is. Don't forget. This is sustain and don't let it be a thing that falls off the plate.
Yeah, it is a really good reminder, isn't it? And it's also just that it's it's always a cycle.
Yeah.
It's a circle of life, it's a circle of education. You know, these things are just, they're going round and round because there's always a new, what's the word? But yeah, no, there's always like a new spanner in the works almost, you know, because you've got new staff or your demographic in the school is changing or the finances are changing or you know, your inspection reports change. Like it's that's why it's going round in circles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what you're doing for your project?
Mine's going to be linked to appraisal models, so
Okay.
it's a little bit of a boring one, but it's just something I need to do, just how to motivate that our appraisal model doesn't link to a financial reward at the end of it. So yeah, trying to find a way to really build a more professional development model into the appraisal where staff, something like pocket staff who would have to be past teachers, but maybe don't want to move into middle leadership roles, but you still want them to want to come in and motivate them. They're trying to rework the appraisal model.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Like the people that want to move into middle leadership or don't want to move into middle leadership and how you encourage them. Because that's succession planning.
Yeah.
You know, you're always like anyone can leave at any point.
Yeah, I think we had to decide on a speaker feedback.
I don't mind talking.
Like your best set for this.
I know that
انا بخش اقول ان الست بتقول التدريب بتاعكم يصير اما اخش انا اقول
how you work with people. So not the timetable construct itself, but is there a different model of, you know, do you come to head of department first, or do you offer open meetings for people to come, or, you know, different ways of thinking about that, which is different and aside that I was thinking when I was looking at
one of the things we have done is review previous year's timetable with the heads of department. What worked well, what didn't work well, what would you like to change? Yeah, that's something we haven't done, and we should engage them in that conversation.
100%. Yeah, and the other thing is then having time reviews where it's an open meeting and the HODs can come along and you know, review where you're at. Maybe, you know, there's pros and cons. Obviously, I'm sure you steer your way, but that was just something I thought might bring a bit of a different dimension. It's not the timetable construction itself; it's the dialogue and the buy-in around it. Anyway, I'll stop talking. Sorry, I was just adding numbers to a group there because they had just 2 people in. Okay, thanks.
It's just an example of how sometimes technology doesn't work. So sorry to Will, he's not been put in a room there. Okay, one of the things that I asked was if we could nominate someone from each room who would just sum everything up. If we could try and do that in around about 30 seconds. So if we go to room number 1, I believe was Matthew, Robert, Salaf and Alex. So is someone going to sum it up for us?
I don't think we actually nominate, so I'll just go. So the first question we looked at implementation, and pretty much it was like how the needs analysis and ideas translate into kind of the theory. I think that was a big one for us, you know, involving stakeholders, considering all areas, and the culture was a big one. And we mentioned quite a lot about staff buy-in, and sometimes there was a lot of negativity regarding the implementation of new projects. And I think it's because we do see quite a lot come and go. You know, I've been in Dubai quite a long time now, and I've seen a lot of things coming into the school and then leaving as well. And I think it's about making sure that we have a real clear long-term vision with things. And sometimes due to external pressures like inspection, maybe we see a lot of short-term vision and short-term implementation. And we thought that maybe the consideration of longer-term vision would help have these kind of effective implementation successes then. What questions do we have? We didn't spend a lot of time on this, but it definitely was about how the project aligns to the standards of the school in terms of broader goals or the school improvement plan. And there's usually a lot of different projects running parallel to each other. So we wanted to make sure they're supporting the overall vision sometimes of the school and the school improvement plan. So that was a question we did throw around. And the project, so it was a couple of projects being considered. Two of them were assessment based. One was more about ensuring that projects have the involvement of not just senior leaders in terms of data. It was more from from the teachers leading next steps. It wasn't about senior leaders creating next steps and middle leaders. It was very much about the teachers and having them driving standards. Another one was about creating a database, ensuring the database was accessible and really effective so that teachers can access it, middle leaders can access it. And the other two I actually can't remember, so apologies to the team then. But it was definitely lots of great ideas shared.
That's brilliant. And if we just go on to group 2, I think that was Jack, Jamie, Salma, and Mir.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so we kind of talked about in terms of when you implement something, we don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it. It's got an impact on student achievement at the end of the day. So then we were discussing kind of how specific do we go with the implementation. That's reflected on kind of some of our areas that we're looking at the moment. One, our MS is we prevent minority students as a group. It's only a small percentage of students. But they are kind of a focus group for us at the moment. So we were talking about, how specific can be. Is it quite big or can we go something quite small? We're discussing as long as it's something that's measurable, can have an impact, then it doesn't really matter, and it's something that's bespoke to you as a school and where your needs are. Then we were kind of discussing things that we might have slightly implemented at the moment, but not embedded. So that's something that we could use. And then I think the main thing was just kind of making sure that it's not something you implement for the sake of it, and it does have an impact at the end of the day, because as we spoke about at the beginning of the session, people talk about 20% of implementations actually stick or embed. So you don't want to just add to that by just something that's not going to have an impact and staff aren't going to see doing it, or just doing it for the sake of doing more. So it's got to be something that is at school, and maybe even something that is partly implemented already, which you're going to take a little bit further.
Okay, thank you, Jack. I'm just going to go on to room number 4. I'm conscious that we might get a wee bit repetitive, but someone from Shane, Louise, Scott, and Aaron's group.
Yeah, I'll take that. Hi, everybody. So with Louise, Scott, and Aaron. So the projects were Louise was hoping to evaluate something between primary and secondary. Scott was hoping to focus on something with data and assessment, and Aaron and I we're going to most likely work on something with behaviour. And Aaron also has a mind to do something with data and assessment. In my own school at the minute, we're struggling with behaviour, so it's like a key topic that hopefully I'm going to implement. What does implementation mean to us? Exactly what Alex and Jack just mentioned: get people to buy in. Sometimes there's negative attitudes to change, so we're hopefully here, at least in my own school, we're going to try and fix that. And the question that Louise had was, could the implementation project, is it okay to scale up, or does it have to be something that needs to be implemented from the ground? Maybe that's something that could be answered.
Okay, that's a worthwhile question. It's probably worth noting that in terms of the assessment of the project, it isn't formally assessed as such. It supports your journey through the NPQH. In terms of what you actually focus on, there isn't really a structure in terms of what you do. There's more of a structure in terms of how you approach that. And we'll circle back to that over the next few slides. As we move on to this next slide and talks about the 6 recommendations for effective implementation, I wanted you to just take a minute just to read the slide. I'll give you a minute to read that, and then we'll move a little bit faster through the next couple of slides. I do have a Padlet that I want to share with you as well. from my previous NPQH cohort, which has examples of their implementation projects that we can have a little discussion about as well in terms of the this effective implementation. I know we've talked about this before, but just reflecting on those key stages, I wanted to get some input from you guys as well. One of the things that I try to do is I try to take a little record of who speaks. So if there's anybody that hasn't spoken just yet that wants to put their hand up and talk about where in these stages would you envisage there being any blocks or challenges? Does anybody want to have a go at answering that, giving some insight into that from your own experience? It could be something that you've already brought into the school. Louise, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think just for me personally, I'm at the kind of journey that I'm on. I was telling the groups that I was in that we've just recently built our secondary school. So in terms of exploring and identifying the problems that we want to solve and in terms of prioritising, I think one of the things that I've learned really quickly is that having to take secondary into consideration when you're looking at a whole school opposed to just a primary school is really challenging. And that's where I want to go with my implementation project, and I'm going to be stepping into the vice principal role, so really seeing things from all aspects. So I think for me, in terms of getting it down to one thing, one problem, and one practice that's going to benefit the whole school is going to be the biggest challenge for me, I think.
I can't see your name. Khaled, did you want to share?
Yes, I have a question actually about the project. It can be something related to professional development, like creating or initiate PLC in the school, because my school doesn't have this PLC that also lead to the student achievement.
Yeah, so if I draw back to what Tanya discussed, your workload is something that's really important through the process of the NPQs. We know that you guys have busy schools and busy jobs, and if it fits in to your remit or your role, we tend to kind of focus on something that can sort of sit nicely with that. But if it is a new project that you want to implement and work with colleagues on that, then you would need to be mindful that it will sort of take or have an impact on that sort of workload moving forward. But yeah, absolutely. Lucy, you've got your hand up again. And you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, just about where you can kind of see those problems sort of coming up there. I think one thing I would say is also sort of the financial impact of these things. Obviously, the context that we're in, we're all in, mostly, I would say all of us are in private schools in Dubai, and that comes with sort of financial implications there. But I'm sure we've all worked in different contexts. I've been a deputy head in Camden for 5 years before I moved back to Dubai last year. And, you know, one of the biggest things we always came up against was the financial side of things. So you can have the buy-in from staff, and that's also extremely difficult. And you can have kind of the eagerness of everybody. And a phrase that came up in our breakout room was creative and productive, which was a really lovely sort of idea behind implementation projects. But ultimately, you know, for some things, if you don't have the finances behind you, or your budgets have been cut, then that can have such a big impact on what you're trying to deliver for the children or for the families that you serve as well. And again, I know that's kind of dependent on context that you're in, and I know often we're very lucky here with the money that we do have, but still, when we're working within corporations, lots of things can come down to money. So you can kind of get through this exploring and preparing, but sometimes when you get to the delivery, it's like, well, actually, you know, are we going to be able to do all of this?
Yeah, and I think that sits nicely into the next couple of slides. You know, this project really, it's about knowledge development. It's about applying new learning and context, insights and new understanding, a sort of improvement of leadership skills, increased practical fluency and the capacity to reflect. These are all coming from the project. Again, I do go back to it. It's about reminding you guys that there is no criteria regarding the focus of the implementation project, so it's absolutely over to you. But to give you a little bit of an insight into previous projects, I don't even know if you can see this. When I put it on the presentation on my computer, I could just about make it out. So I was pretty confident that if it went online, you could see it. This is the cohort that just went through last year. There's a range of projects that we've gone through. Everything from holistic education, intervention for students in terms of reading, peer coaching, narrowing the gender gap in core subjects, using data to drive focused instruction. You can see that there's instructional coaching in there, professional growth. One of the things that I try to do with this as well is I try to make sure that there's some form of transparency amongst the group so that we have that support network. There has been dare I say it, a WhatsApp group of NPQ participants as well in the last group. And if that's something that you guys want to set up, then we could facilitate that at the end of this call. A lot of, I think if you work in Dubai, if you work anywhere, if you're alive at the minute, then you probably so I go on to this. I'm going to skip through the next couple of slides. The reason why I'm going to skip through the next couple of slides is that there is going to be a part of an assumption from my part that we've experienced a lot of this through our own practice in terms of gathering evidence. If you've worked in Dubai or the UAE for any length of time, even in the UK, evidence forms a large part of your role in leadership. To draw on my experience today, we've got a pre-inspection visit from BSO. The last, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, and I think Jack and Will agree with me, has been that sort of evidence gathering. So the idea that we preempt what we think that the inspectors are going to try to unpick, and we put that in front of them. And in the same way, with your implementation project, it's utilizing all of that evidence to support your decision making moving forward in terms of the decisions that you'll make in terms of that implementation project. Could I just get a brief discussion again in terms of a hands up from your own experiences? What kind of evidence do you use on a daily basis? What have you found that's been useful in terms of your own practice moving forward, in terms of your own context? Is there anything that you have stumbled upon? It could be I was going to say Twitter, and then I realized that I'm probably 3 or 4 years behind. Something that you use to gather evidence, or does anybody want to put their hand up and give some insight into how you approach evidence in your own practice? I think I have Saliha. And you're muted at the minute, Saliha.
First, I will tell you about the evidence is a context of implementation projects, which is referred to the data information and documentation that supports the effectiveness, impact, or progress of the project. Types of implementations we have, like quantitative evidence, numerical data, and qualitative evidence, descriptive insights gathered from interviews, focus area groups, or observations. Now, sources of evidences are internal sources, student assessment, academic records, teacher feedback, and classroom observations. External sources, research studies or case studies related to similar project guidelines or standards from educational board or organization. Third is stakeholder input surveys or feedback forms from students, parents, and staff. How to draw this?
Saliha, can I just stop you there just for a second?
Yes.
Would you be able to select one of those pieces of evidence and just talk about how you've actually used it within your own context in your own school and how that's informed what you've done and your next steps?
Like if I'm getting the evidences that the teachers are not giving the means good in lesson delivery in the classes. So that data I'm collecting through the students, through the lesson observations, and these data I'm collecting, and then I'm trying to use this evidence, and then I can make a project for this, that to improve the teaching and learning process by taking different kind of observation through the MLTs and SLTs.
Okay. I've got another hand. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. Is it Kurat? Wasim? Sorry about that pronunciation.
No problem. Okay, so for me, I use the evidences in the form of trackers, checklists from the lesson plans, and feedback from the teachers and as well as from the students' parents. And sometimes we use photos also for the evidences during different activities, and videos with sometimes with the QR codes to access easily. So this is what we usually use.
Okay, perfect. Right. I'm just having a bit of technical difficulty here, so I'm just going to give it a 5-minute break because something has happened. So if you just give me 5 minutes, please, then I'm going to come back in.
شيل الواد الصومالي باقي تكريم كرم كل تكريم بس تكريم تحت ايه انا الصومالي انت كنت بتسأله على العيلة هو الصومالي
But I think I'm back. I hope I'm back. My screen just keeps freezing at the minute, so I'm kind of hoping that I'm on. It should say the Education Endowment Foundation review of implementation in schools. If you can see that, if you just give me a visual, a thumbs up there, that would be all right. Perfect. I think we're back on track. Brilliant. Okay, I just want you to read the following statement for me, please. Just so just reviewing the executive summary. If we focus on those highlights there, we try to make it easy for you. And these are crucial in the successful implementation. And I think that's really important as a reflection point as we move forward in terms of what we're doing over the next 18 months. So in terms of the diagram that you see, I just want you to take a few moments. I'm going to put you into another breakout room. It's going to be 5 minutes. And I just want you to use that framework and just try to unpick those initial ideas as a starting point. I'm going to put you in for 5 minutes. And then after that, we should be able to then move on to the framework. And then that'll get us finished. I feel like I've skipped through a few slides at the minute. Probably lost about 5 minutes trying to figure out how to use the technology, but I should be able to finish up with a good 5 to 10 minutes before 11 o'clock, which should give you a bit of time to, I suppose, get your head before you go into the rest of the day. So if you just give me 2 minutes, I'll put you into this breakout room. As the chat function doesn't seem to be working, it might be useful to just take a quick screenshot of that. Or for those that maybe like me that aren't technologically minded, you might need to get your phone out, take a photograph of it. And I think Will, and hopefully I can put you back into a group this time. I think it was getting very clunky.
It's 3 hours. That's you can just assign that by whatever. Just click on one side.
Again.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I'm thinking about implementing a professional development project. So the starting point will be collecting data from the class observations, the parent satisfaction, the student internal and external exam result, then set clear objectives, which domain or which aspects we want to develop. So we'll start our professional development or PLC project. Then after a while, as I read in the slide, there's intervention. I mean, I have to check again my implementation so I can adapt or modify my program. So every time I have to check by also the same source of data, I try to triangulate the data to adapt my implementation again.
And what is your project? Do you know what it's going to be based on?
It will be professional development to create PLC,
so,
to create PLC
so
in the school.
actually, okay. So actually how you're going to kind of adapt and improve the professional development program that you run.
Yes. Actually, we don't have PLC. I have the head of department, so I can initiate something like this, like PLC.
And what school are you in?
I am in school in Saudi Arabia. It's called Manarat Al-Khoban in Saudi Arabia. I'm Egyptian, but I'm working in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, and
It's British and
do you take a
American
head of department?
I'm head of department, yes.
Okay, what department is it?
We have American and British school and the head of both.
Okay, I see what you mean. Oh, yeah, okay. So you're the head teacher.
Yes.
Yeah, got you.
Yes.
Okay. So what have you done previously, I guess, in terms of like implementing like a new professional development program?
We started already. But the resources and timing Because as you said, all the teachers are busy, and now we have the teacher load. The period is 1 hour, and every teacher is teaching about 26, 28 hours, not session. The session is 1 hour, not 45 minutes. You are working in Dubai, right?
Yeah.
So it's 45 minutes, I think, in your school, but here it's 1 hour. So we have
Each lesson, you mean?
each lesson is 1 hour.
No, it's an hour, yeah. Each lesson is an hour here.
The same. Each teacher is teaching 26, 28. But that's an overload. We don't have enough time to really implement proper PLCs.
Okay. Do you have a weekly like PDM, professional development meeting?
It's not a regular basis, but I will try to make it in regular basis and try to make it more effective. And maybe I will assign them online courses so they can finish that in their own pace and give reflection on that. And we can start peer visits. And I will try. There are many ideas in my mind to implement regarding that, but my main problem is the time and the overload of the teacher.
Okay. What about like middle leaders? Do you have middle leaders who would step up and who would like run the staff meetings, the professional development meetings?
Yes, it's already through each subject. We have the subject lead who is running his department, but I want to make something like a clear objective to be implemented for all, not like each subject is carrying their own business alone.
Yeah.
Because actually, maybe the middle leader, subject lead, also need professional development.
Yeah. What's kind of the main driver in your school? Like for the I guess for like the project as a whole, or for what you want to do with PDMs, like what's kind of your main school improvement target this year?
The main improvement is the student results, especially in MAP, in the American stream, SET in American stream, and IGCSE and A-level in the British stream. And also parent satisfaction. We have low parent satisfaction.
Okay.
I think professional development will help in that. We create our SIP, we have many domains, but they are the priority, the student results.
Okay. So does that come back to the teaching and learning then?
Yes. Yes, actually. We don't have differentiation properly, for example. Some teachers, they have a problem in teaching techniques. Yeah, some kind of that in lesson planning already, they have a problem in lesson planning.
Yeah.
So we have this kind
Because
of,
I guess in a sense, sorry, go on.
we have this kind of problem. That's it.
Yeah. I guess in a sense it's about like getting buy-in with everybody on what the main school improvement target is, and then using your middle leaders from there to drive that forward in their own subjects or their own departments. You know, if they've all got the buy-in and they understand the priority and the focus for the whole school, if that's coming back to teaching and learning and teaching and learning strategies, then they can focus on, well, what do we do in maths? You know, what are our strategies in maths to drive teaching and learning forward, or what are our strategies in science? And where, I guess, for the children, where's the consistency as well? Because, you know, you're secondary, right? So children are moving from teacher to teacher. So if you don't have consistency, then every lesson that the children go into, they've got to learn new strategies or new, you know, behavior rules, or you know, new understanding of what the language means, or new understanding of what the differentiation is and how it works in each class. So I guess the big focus about teaching and learning is consistency, and is it consistent for the children to support them?
Yes, right. And the good point here is, thanks God that I am a kind of person that everybody can respect, everybody can listen to him, everybody can believe in him. So if I am saying something, so everybody feel that, yes, that's the truth. We have to go with this direction. So alhamdulillah, everybody is believing me here in the school. One of also the main problem that we are in a school related to a group, like James in Dubai, like Talim in Dubai. The company is called Ma'arif. It's on 20 something school in Saudi Arabia. For many we are receiving many instructions from the company. We don't have the autonomy to create our problems, our programs as we like. We are receiving the professional development materials or topics from the company, which is not fit our needs. We don't have, for example, problem in classroom management, but we are receiving material and instructions from the company to do classroom management training, and it's for everyone. But most of the teachers not facing a problem in classroom management. We are receiving material or instructions or external training or lesson planning, but the majority of the teacher can plan properly, so it's not fit the teacher's need. Imagine that our teachers they have an experience how to write the objective or the objective of the lesson, but they are sitting for 1 hour to learn about how to write the objective of the lesson. So it doesn't make sense for them. So so it's one of the problem also. So if I want to implement my project, so maybe there is a conjunction with what the company instruct us to do.
Okay, so we're back in. One of the things that I need to clarify is that I'm not going to put you into another breakout room. I think I put you in for too long there. And apologies that things didn't run smoothly with the call. I suppose from my perspective, I suppose it'd be useful for me to reflect within this framework in terms of how I've approached it or how I might approach it. That initial stage of assessing need. So what is the problem and what's already going on? I know that Will, who looks at timetable, has been talking quite a lot about that sort of review process of our timetable. If anybody knows the context of Safa Community School here, we have a split site. So the nature of a split site can put a bit of a strain and stress on staff. To move from the top floor of one building, which would be Key Stage 3, to the other site, to the top floor. I would say 5 minutes. Will would probably say 4 minutes, and somebody else would say 10 minutes. But realistically, it's a 7-minute transition. So in terms of that initial stage, that's our approach. What are we doing? Well, we've tried our very best to maintain a very decent staff load. So we try to make sure that we have transition time in between the timetables. We've implemented a 5-minute transition period from registration into the next. But what does the research say? Well, the research says that if teachers aren't in front of the students, then they're not going to learn. So that gives us our rationale as to what we need to do next. And what are the barriers? Well, the barriers are that we've got a split site and it's very difficult, and we've got a budget. And if I draw myself all the way back, and I think it might have been Lucy at the very beginning, talked about some of those challenges and that sort of financial challenge of how we're going to do that. So, over to Will now with this implementation project is that within the next 18 months, we're going to have a beautiful timetable with no transitional issues, and everybody's going to be happy, and well-being is going to be through the roof. I jest. That exploration stage for me is probably the most interesting one. I think that everybody in this call will talk about time. I guarantee being able to block off 2 hours of your time today to have this session has probably created maybe more anxieties than you wanted. Particularly when we've got a few days left of this particular term, and I'm sure that everybody's thinking about all the things that are going to happen in term 1. But that stage of digging into the data, digging into the information, having those conversations with people, trying to unpick what those next steps are for you is really important. I do have to, I suppose, kind of draw back to this idea that this implementation project isn't a vehicle for you to identify staff or identify problems with staff. It is a vehicle for sustained positive change And I think that's something that we need to reflect on and I think embed into our approach as we move forward. The design and the planning of your project. A lot of you have talked about what could it be or what can it be. As I've shown from the Padlet, there is no guide in terms of what it can be, but we do have I suppose, a planning and design model for you that can support that, and strategies and stages, and thinking about the impact as well. You know, we're in this game for the impact of the students. You know, we're not in this game to make sure that we've got fancy schmancy things that are on Instagram. It's for the students. We're in education for education. It's about a learning process and the impact that we're going to have on our children moving forward. I hope that was brief, but it gave you enough information to go away and think about it. Tanya's going to move in now, and we're going to talk about the next stages for you, which should take maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Thanks very much, Emmett. Back in for the last roundup, really. Just wanted to pick up on a couple of things that I heard being raised as I was sitting in the back there. First of all, someone asked a question about, does the project have to be a start from scratch, or can it be an upscaling? I would say you can go for an upscaling as long as you are able to go through the 4 stages of implementation as shown by the EEF model. So I'll just take us back to that EEF. Yeah, there we go. Okay, the Education Endowment Foundation. As long as, even if you're starting from a certain base point, I think you can go for the upscaling of something that already exists, as long as you are taking it from that start point onwards. So you are going through the stages of planning, explore, sustain, and so on. So as long as you can take it through the 4 different stages, that would be acceptable. In terms of how it's presented, as Emmett said, it's not about the glitz and the glam. It's actually what you're going to get from your leadership journey, taking it through from start to finish. However, in your final face-to-face day of the programme, you will be asked to share your project, if that makes sense. And some people actually use this model. They use this as the first thing I did was X in the exploration phase when I was gathering data, and then you take it through. Equally, when we meet for all of our sessions, our remaining PLGs and face-to-faces, there's often time to reflect. So when we meet for our next session in February, we will undoubtedly say, okay, how are we doing with our exploration phase of our implementation project? So I hope that helps. We do revisit it and it's drip feed. There is a lot of literature on implementation in the implementation tab itself. Okay, so as well as PLG1 that you were looking at on UCL Extend for this session, there is a separate domain on implementation. And in there, you will find a couple of the appendices of this document, the Education Endowment Foundation. So there are a couple of templates of models that you could use to make your action plan, if you want to call it that. Okay, so there's no specific prescription as to how you need to present the project, but these are definitely the recommended. You know, this is the reading that you've been doing. You've had the I put it down somewhere else, but your domain digest on implementation to read as well. So there's lots of information surrounding that. The other thing I just wanted to remind people is, it doesn't have to be something new and fandangled. It can be completely and should be totally related to your role. Someone mentioned on here when you were chatting earlier, make sure it aligns to the vision of the school, the standards.
Can someone at the camera please come to reception? Thank you.
the standards that the school are striving towards from the last inspection. You know, make sure it totally aligns to the school improvement plan. That's absolutely key. I'm sure you know that already, but it's just a reminder to make sure you're not running alongside your school improvement plan. You're actually driving straight within it, if that makes sense. Remember the importance of monitoring, so to build in that monitoring to your program, because as you've all spoken about, I think, over the course of this session, the importance of getting to the point of being able to upscale it later on, the long term, or even certainly talking about the sustainability. So well after you've gone, what is being put in place and thought about to ensure the sustainability? So they are some of my sort of reflections. Before I go to the very final slide, did anybody have any pressing questions before I just go through the last couple of points? Everybody's done with screen time. Okay, take it to the last slide. Just to conclude then, just to remind everybody where we're at, we will obviously meet again after your wonderful winter break. We will meet again for our full face-to-face day. Obviously, you'll get details about that closer to the time on Tuesday, the 4th of February, as indicated on your route map. Please do make sure you've got these dates in your diary and that they are all booked out, ready to go. Okay, we really try to not veer away from these dates. Right, just before I round up, Khalid, a quick question.
Yes, please. If in the case if I cannot attend the face-to-face event, can I do it online?
Yes, we are able to live stream someone in if they are unable to attend, but obviously please do everything you can, because ultimately the biggest added value of our programs and going with Infinite Learning is the face-to-face interaction and the networking opportunity. So I really hope you can join us.
It will be in Dubai, right?
So just before we move to our next session after the winter break, can you just make sure then that you have completed, as it says there, the reflection task from today on UCL Extend? Please do, after the session, you're online. If you've got 10 minutes left in school time, just capture any relevant bullet points, any takeaways from today that you want to remind yourself of. Think about your focus of your implementation project and just drawing your attention there to bullet point number 3. You will have noticed by now on UCL Extend that there is a discussion forum. Please do use that. It is great because you can pop some ideas in this. I'm thinking about doing this for a project. Has anybody else had experience of this in the past? So you're liaising with people bigger than us, far wider, and see if anybody else has any feedback for you. So do engage in the discussion forums. Continue to work through your Module 1 domain digests, but before the February meeting, so probably mid-January, Emmett and I will write to you about your next sort of phases of your preparation. However, it is all on Extend, okay? And if you're worried you haven't heard from us, do drop a note to me, because sometimes you might have been missed off a distribution list, etc. Okay, never sit there and then the night before go, oh, I never received anything, so I can't attend. The dates are in your diary. You know, please do shout if you feel you've been missed off something. It says, work through the relevant case study exemplification materials. So just read the case studies that are pertinent to you. The areas you've identified for development. If there's a case study that seems to highlight that, please do select the appropriate ones as per your learning audit. And this last thing I often get asked about, the penultimate point. Start to consider which formative assessment tasks you would like to complete. Over the course of the programme, you have to complete 8. 2 from each module, so 2 from 1, 2 from 2, 2 from 3, that's 6, and 2 of your choice, so 8. So 8 formative assessment tasks need to be completed, okay? So at the end of module 1, you need to have completed at least 2. You will find these in the PLJ, your personal learning journal. They do not have to be uploaded anyway. They are for your own reflections. All of the work you do will contribute to your final written assessment at the end of the programme. Okay, more about that later. It is the case study. You can look at it on Extend if you want to, but all of this work contributes to your development as a leader, but also in terms of filtering into helping you with your assessment at the end of the programme. It is 11:01. I am going to stop talking. If anybody wanted to stay on the call with any individual questions, please do. I am here, as is Emmett. Otherwise, have an amazing winter break. We can't wait to meet you in person, and we look forward to working with you as a group. Thank you very much for your contributions today, guys. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good break.
Bye.